Alright, Section 4, Cooling, Lubricating Oil System, and Fueling Oil System. Cooling system. Water is circulated through the engine radiator with the oil cooler with the two pumps wound with the engine, cool air with the radiator with the control with the shove with the floor, electrically driven, the cool fans, the operating with the fan shove with the entirely automatic under the normal condition, hold with the temperature of the engine, cooling water, so with the gauge inlet with the water with the pump with the reading of the green area at 120 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. In the event with excessive the cooling water temperature, high temperature alarm switch with the clove with the color with the red light to show with the unaffected with the alarm bell with the ring on all the units. Operating water level. The opening the water level descends with the water tank, the neck for the water with the gauge will have to indicate the minimum and maximum water level. The engine running and stop. The engine running and stop. The engine should never be operated with water below the low water level. The progressive lowering of the water in the gauge of the glass indicated leaking of the cooling system should be reported. The system filtered either through the filler pipe at the roof of the locomotive above the water with the tank through the filler pipe at the return of the unit either side with the fill. The system provided with the valve at the top of the engine. Open the filling level. The gauge G with the fill. The slowly unit runs from out of the filling level. The gauge pipe of the G gauge. Close the filling level valve G, and the filling of the drive with the narrowly drive the engine. Follow these additional steps. The drive of the engine running several minutes. This will eliminate air pocket with the system. Shut down the engine, open the valve of the G, and wait for 3 minutes to add the water until the room runs out of the filling level of the pipe. And close the filling level of the valve G. If the cooling system with the hot engine has been strained with the draining, refill it immediately with cold water. If this is done with the sun change, the temperature might crack at the warp the cylinder liners and heads. Caution: do not attempt to fill the cooling system through the drain pipe located underneath the locomotive. The system should be not filled above the maximum water level indicated on the water tank to prevent the freezing of the radiators in the winter, to prevent loss of the rust and inhibitors for the drain back to the G valve level. Lubricating oil system. The oil pressure under the pressure force of the engine for lubricating piston cooling, lubricating piston cooling with a lube oil pump with the lubricating available with the oil pan, picked up with the scavenging oil pump with the end force through the oil filters, coolers to the oil stream with the housing of the ready with the recirculation by the oil pump, the excessive returns of the oil pan where it's healthy to use. Oil level. The oil level may be checked with the engine running with any speed, but it should be read between low and full with either band gauge on each side of the engine. When the engine is stopped, the oil filter of the pan cooler is drained back into the oil pan level. The dipstick should show system charged with the marking of the system uncharged is viewed with the maintenance force with oil filling when filling the oil pan when no oil filter elements are installed. 402. Adding an oil system. When the oil is added to the system, it must be poured out through the opening of the head of the square over the top of the strainer, and the housing should be the round cap of the remove while the engine is running. The high oil pressure for this will come from the openings, possibly cause personal injury. When the engine stops, the oil with the cooler core chamber will drain with the strainer of the chamber. The overflow with the strainer engine oil. They'll bring the engine oil with the bandit gauge reading with the system charge. The level is below the system of the uncharged level becomes so some of the oil is tripped through the oil filter oil lines in the engine. Alright, 403, oil pressure. Oil pressure at 800 RPM is normally between 35 and 45 pounds, but it should not be below the 20 pounds. The idle pressure should be at least 6 pounds, and the event with the dangerously low oil pressure for the engine is automatically stopped. Fuel oil system, fuel in each of the units circulated through the injector of the electrical driven fuel pump, the failure of the pump, the operated clove with the emergency fuel cutoff without the clock strain with the close of the fuel failure, section 5, section. Filling the fuel tank. The fuel tank can be filled with either side of the locomotive with the maximum of the rate of the 250 gallons per minute with the tube with the baffle, the vent with the tank with the direct reading of the side of the level of the gauge with the located with each side of the fuel tank adjoining with the fuel fillers, and again the level of the fuel oil starting at 4.5 inches from the top of the tank. It should be observed with the filling of the top of the preventing the overflowing of the fuel. Should it be filled with the reliable fuel filter before it enters with the tank with the fuel capacity each of the tank is 1,200 gallons. Do not handle fuel that are near open flame. 405, fuel gauge. Located with the engine control panel, the fuel panel with the engine room with the direction of the air operated with the gauge to indicate with the quantity of the oil fuel with the tank with the gauge does not show the tank to fuel level. Continuously a push button needle valve directly below fuel level gauge must be pushed in to get the fuel level indication on the gauge. 406, emergency fuel cutoff valve. The emergency fuel cutoff valve is provided with the cutoff of the fuel supply to the fuel pump, the vent with the fire, any of the emergency located with the center of the other side of the fuel tank with the compartment of which is the sliding cover on each side of the locomotive. Both the aid units attached with the side of the skirt, a small box with the lift of the cover and clove with the box from the panel, the whole ring with either of the cable running with the fuel cutoff with the valve with a small ring with located with the copper and cap on the A unit. One of the engine room will all the governor end of the engine at the B unit with the fuel cutoff valve with the trip and the fuel with the cutoff with the pulling at one of the rings. The trip valve underneath the fuel tank must be reset manually. The reset of the crawl and the locomotive with the fuel tank of the slide valve of the compartment. They covered the one side with the pull, the fuel valve, set valves, and sent yokes to be hold the valve, the open and closed valve compartment. Figure 5.9, section 5. Section 5, on the road troubleshooting.